table looked normal, plates of ugali and fish, the smell of sukuma wiki, the low hum of the radio in the corner. My mother, Lynette, kept smiling, asking everyone to eat more. Benson sat across from me, his chair a little too close, his eyes following me every time I moved. I told myself I was imagining it. I always told myself that. I was 19, home from college, trying to act like nothing had changed. Benson laughed loudly, telling the same old stories, pouring drinks like a proud host. When he set my glass down, his fingers brushed mine. Just for a second. Too slow. I felt my stomach tighten. I took a small sip. Taste was wrong. Bitter, sharp, like medicine hiding behind sugar. I froze with the glass still near my lips. My heart started beating faster, loud in my ears. I looked at my mother. She was talking, happy, trusting. I didn't want to ruin the moment. I didn't want to be dramatic again. Benson kept watching me. Not openly. Quietly. Like he was waiting for something. When I didn't drink more, his smile stiffened. "You don't like it?" he asked too quickly. I said it was fine and forced a small laugh. My hand was shaking, so I set the glass down. A warning rose inside me, clear and cold. Not fear. Knowing. The kind that doesn't shout, just presses on your chest and says, "Pay attention." I remembered other moments like this. Looks held too long. Jokes that weren't jokes. Silence that felt heavy. Everyone else kept eating. Forks clinked. Someone laughed. The room felt warm, but I was cold. I knew something was wrong. And I knew, somehow, that this dinner was about to change everything. I kept my eyes on my plate, but my mind was racing. The bitter taste was still on my tongue, like a warning that refused to fade. I tried to breathe slowly, the way I used to before exams, but my chest felt tight. Across the table, Benson was laughing again, telling a story that wasn't even funny. Everyone laughed anyway. That's how it always went with him. I watched him without lifting my head. He leaned back in his chair, confident, relaxed. He reached for the salt, then his phone buzzed. He frowned and pulled it out, his attention breaking for the first time all evening. His eyes dropped to the screen. His shoulders turned slightly away from the table. That was the moment. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure someone could hear it. I told myself not to be stupid, not to imagine things, not to do something I couldn't undo. But another voice, quieter and stronger, said this was my chance. Maybe my only one. My hand moved before my fear could stop it. I reached for my glass, then paused, pretending to adjust my plate. Benson was still looking at his phone, annoyed now, typing fast. My mother was talking to an aunt, her back turned. No one was watching me. No one ever really did. I slid my glass a few inches to the right. My fingers brushed the tablecloth, leaving a small ripple in the fabric. Then I took his glass and pulled it toward me, slow and steady, like I was just making space on the table. The glasses made the softest sound when they touched. My breath caught. Waited. No one looked up. Time felt strange, stretched thin. Every second felt loud. I expected someone to ask what I was doing. I expected Benson to look up and catch me. But the room stayed the same. The radio kept playing. Plates kept clinking. Life kept going. When the glasses were fully switched, my hands went cold. I folded them in my lap, pressing my nails into my palms to stop them from shaking. My heart was racing, but my face felt calm, almost blank. I didn't feel brave. I felt empty, like I had stepped outside myself and was watching from far away. Benson put his phone down and reached for the glass without looking. He took a big sip. I watched his throat move as he swallowed. A strange wave passed through me, part relief, part fear, part guilt. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just sat there listening to my own heartbeat. I told myself I hadn't planned this, that I hadn't wanted revenge. I just didn't want to drink that glass. I just wanted to be safe. If nothing happened, I would say I was wrong. I would live with that. I could handle being wrong. What I couldn't handle was being silent again. I picked up the other glass, the one that was now mine, and held it close without drinking. Benson kept talking, still confident, still unaware. My mother laughed at something he said. I nodded along, playing my part while inside everything felt sharp and clear. The decision had taken only seconds. But I knew deep down that those seconds had already changed the direction of my life. Benson lifted the glass again like nothing in the world had changed. He took another long drink, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He kept talking louder now, his voice filling the room. First, everything looked normal. Too normal. I almost started to doubt myself. Then his hand shook. It was small at first, just a quick tremble as he set the glass down. He frowned at it, like his own body had betrayed him. He laughed and said something about being tired. "Long day," he joked, waving it off. Everyone smiled. No one questioned him. They never did. I watched his face closely. A light sweat had appeared on his forehead, catching the glow of the bulb above us. He blinked a few times, slower than before, like the room was moving and he was trying to keep up. His words started to stretch, soft around the edges. A sentence that should have taken seconds took forever. My stomach twisted. Part of me wanted to stop it, to stand up and shout that something was wrong. But another part of me stayed very still, very quiet. I had already crossed a line. There was no going back. Benson tried to pour himself more drink. The bottle slipped in his hand and bumped against the table. "Ah!" He laughed again, too hard this time. "See, I'm losing my touch." His laughter sounded strange, hollow, like it didn't belong to him anymore. My mother looked at him, her smile fading just a little. "Are you okay?" she asked. He nodded too fast. "Of course," he said, but the words came out thick, almost heavy. I could see the effort it took him to form them. He pushed his chair back, standing up like he wanted to prove something. The moment his feet hit the floor, his body swayed. The room seemed to tilt with him. He grabbed the edge of the table, knocking a spoon to the ground. The sound felt loud, sharp. "I'm fine," he insisted, but his knees bent. For a second he stood there, shaking, his face pale, his eyes unfocused. Then he laughed again, softer this time, confused. "Why is everything moving?" No one laughed with him. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I kept my face still, my hands folded, my eyes wide with fake worry. Inside my thoughts were racing. This was happening. This was really happening. Benson tried to take a step. He couldn't. His legs didn't listen. He sank back into the chair, breathing fast now. His words broke apart, pieces falling to the floor. "Lynette," he said, slurring her name. "Something's wrong." The room fell quiet. The easy noise of dinner disappeared, replaced by fear and confusion. My mother rushed to his side, calling his name. Plates were pushed away. Someone stood up to help. I stayed where I was, watching as the man who had always controlled the room lost control of his own body. The room wasn't spinning for me. It was spinning for him. Chairs scraped loudly as people stood up at the same time. Someone gasped. Another person called Benson's name, like that alone could pull him back to himself. My mother rushed to his side, her hands shaking as she touched his arm, his face, trying to understand what she was seeing. "Benson," she said, "what's happening to you?" He tried to answer, but his mouth didn't work the way it should. His head dropped forward, then rolled to the side. His body felt heavy now, like it no longer belonged to him. When he tried to stand again, his legs gave up completely. He collapsed, hitting the side of the table on the way down. Plates rattled. A glass tipped over and spilled across the floor. The room exploded into noise. People shouted for help. Someone said his name again and again. Someone else ran to the door to call a neighbor. My mother knelt beside him, panic written all over her face. She kept asking questions he couldn't answer. Her voice cracked, breaking in a way I had never heard before. I stood up slowly, letting my chair fall back like everyone else's. I brought my hands to my mouth, letting my eyes go wide, played my part, fear on the outside, shock in my voice. "Mama," I said, like I didn't understand, like I was just a scared girl watching her family fall apart. Inside, everything was quiet. It was strange. With so much chaos around me, my mind felt clear, sharp, almost peaceful. I noticed small details. The way Benson's shoe had slipped off his heel. The way the radio kept playing a happy song, wrong for the moment. The way my mother's hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold his head. Guests crowded around, then stepped back, unsure where to stand or what to do. Someone whispered prayers. Someone else said maybe it was food poisoning. Another guessed it was his heart. No one looked at me. No one thought to. Benson's eyes were half open now, unfocused. His breathing was uneven, loud, like he was fighting his own chest. My mother leaned close, crying openly, begging him to stay awake. She looked lost, like the ground had disappeared under her feet. I felt something then, but it wasn't guilt. It was distance. Like I was standing on the other side of thick glass, watching a scene that had been building for years finally reach its end. I remembered all the times I had frozen like this before. All the times I had learned to look calm while everything inside me locked down. Someone said they needed to get him to the hospital. Two men lifted Benson carefully, struggling with his weight. His head lolled back, his mouth opening as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. My mother followed them, crying, holding his hand like she could keep him here by force. I stayed behind for a second, my legs steady, my breathing slow. I looked at the table, the two glasses, at the spill on the floor. No one noticed where I was looking. When I finally moved, I let my shoulders shake. I let my voice sound small. But deep inside, beneath the fear I was pretending to feel, there was only one clear thought. Whatever happened next, I was no longer powerless. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and cold air. Bright white lights burned my eyes as we rushed through the doors of Jaramogi Odinga Hospital. Nurses moved fast, asking questions, pushing a stretcher, calling out numbers and names I didn't understand. Benson lay still now, his face pale, his chest rising and falling in an uneven rhythm. My mother followed closely, crying, begging them to help him. Her voice echoed down the hallway, sharp with fear. I walked behind her, quiet, my hands folded together. I felt like I was floating, like my feet weren't really touching the floor. They took him away from us. The doors swung closed, and suddenly we were left with plastic chairs and silence. My mother collapsed into one of the seats, covering her face. A nurse brought her water. Someone told her to breathe slowly. No one spoke to me. Time stretched. Minutes felt like hours. I watched doctors walk past, their faces serious. Finally, one of them stopped in front of us. He spoke gently, carefully, like every word mattered. He said they were running tests, blood tests, toxicology. My mother nodded, wiping her tears. Was it his heart? She asked. Was it the food? The doctor didn't answer right away. He looked at his clipboard, then at her. We found something in his blood, he said. Sedatives. A strong amount. The word hung in the air. Sedatives. My mother stared at him like she hadn't heard correctly. Medicine, she asked. But he's not sick. The doctor shook his head slowly. This was not prescribed. Someone took something they shouldn't have. I felt my stomach drop, even though I already knew. Hearing it out loud made it real in a way nothing else had. My mother's hands started shaking again. Are you saying? Her voice broke. She couldn't finish the sentence. The doctor nodded. We have to inform the police. Quietly. Just to ask questions. Please. That word landed harder than the rest. My mother's face drained of color. She looked down the hallway like Benson might appear and explain everything. Like this was all a mistake. Two officers arrived not long after. They didn't make a scene. They spoke in low voices with the doctor. Then with my mother. They asked simple questions at first. What did he eat? What did he drink? Who was with him? My mother answered between sobs. Just family, she said. Just dinner. One of the officers turned to me. And you? He asked softly. Did you notice anything unusual? My heart beat once hard. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. My voice sounded steady, even to me. Everything seemed normal. He nodded, writing something down. His eyes stayed on me for a moment longer than necessary, then moved on. More questions followed. About the house. About the guests. About Benson's habits. My mother listened like she was underwater, everything reaching her too late. I sat beside her, silent, watching the truth move closer with every word. Somewhere behind those closed doors, Benson lay connected to machines, his body telling a story he could no longer control. And in that cold hospital hallway, under harsh lights and quiet voices, I understood something clearly for the first time. This was no longer just a bad night. This was the beginning of everything coming out. The questions didn't stop after that night. They came quietly, carefully, like people were afraid to break something fragile. A nurse asked how long Benson had been in my life. An officer asked if there had ever been problems at home. My mother kept saying no, shaking her head, holding on to the version of her marriage that felt safe. I stayed quiet at first. I told myself this wasn't the time, that my mother was already breaking, that if I spoke, everything would fall apart. But the truth has a way of pushing forward, even when you try to hold it back. Came out slowly, not all at once. I started with the small things, the ones that were easy to explain. How Benson always wanted to sit too close. How his hand would rest on my shoulder longer than needed. How he liked to comment on my body, then laugh and say he was just joking. My voice shook as I spoke, but once I started, it was hard to stop. I told her about the way he would enter my room without knocking. How he would stand too close behind me in the kitchen. How his jokes had teeth. "If you tell anyone," he would say with a smile, "they'll say you misunderstood." Then he'd laugh like it was clever, like it was nothing. My mother stared at the floor. She didn't interrupt. Her breathing changed, shallow and fast, like she was remembering something she had tried very hard to forget. I told her about the looks. The way he watched me when he thought no one noticed. The way he would get angry if I pulled away. The way he always made it seem like I was the problem. Too sensitive. Too quiet. Too dramatic. "I thought it was normal," I said softly. "I thought maybe I was wrong." That's when my mother's face broke. She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely now. She whispered my name like it hurt to say it. "I saw things," she said. "I just didn't want to believe them." She remembered moments then. Times she had walked into a room and felt tension she couldn't explain. Times she noticed how quiet I became around him. How I stopped wearing certain clothes. How I flinched when he raised his voice. She remembered asking me once if everything was okay, and how quickly I had said yes. "I should have asked again," she said, crying openly now. "I should have listened." There was no anger in her voice. Only guilt. Heavy and crushing. I reached for her hand, surprised by my own calm. "I didn't know how to tell you," I said. "He made me feel like no one would believe me. Like I would destroy our family." The words hung between us, painful and honest. In that hospital hallway, under harsh lights and tired eyes, the past finally had space to breathe. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was broken and real and long overdue. My mother held my hand tightly, like she was afraid I would disappear. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying this alone. The police didn't rush it. They never do. They waited until Benson was stable enough to talk, then they asked for his phone. My mother handed it over with shaking hands, like it might burn her skin. She kept saying she didn't know the passcode. She kept saying she didn't touch his things. Her voice sounded far away, like it wasn't really hers. An officer tried anyway. Benson had always been careless, confident, certain no one would ever look too closely. The phone unlocked easier than anyone expected. First it was quiet. Just two officers standing near the wall, scrolling, tapping, not saying much. I sat beside my mother, my heart slow and heavy now. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. One of the officers stopped scrolling. His face changed. Not shock. Something colder. Familiar. He turned the phone slightly so his partner could see. They exchanged a look that said everything before any words were spoken. Then the questions changed. They asked Benson's name again. His age. Where he worked. How long he had lived in Kisumu. They asked my mother how often other children visited the house. Nieces. Neighbors. Friends from church. My mother looked confused. "Why?" she asked. The officer took a breath. "We found messages," he said gently. Messages. There were conversations saved under fake names. Simple greetings at first. Compliments. Jokes. Then promises. But the same words repeated again and again like a script. You're special. Don't tell anyone. You misunderstood. You'll ruin everything. Photos came next. Not all of them clear. Some taken in mirrors. Some cropped to hide faces. Enough to know what they were. Enough to make my chest tighten and my throat burn. And then there were other names. Other girls. Some were older than me. Some younger. Some from nearby towns. Some from places we had visited as a family. Dates lined up. Locations repeated. A pattern forming slowly, then all at once. One officer stepped away to make a call. Another wrote notes without looking up. The room felt smaller, heavier, like the air itself was pressing down on us. My mother covered her mouth, rocking slightly in her chair. "This can't be real," she whispered. "This can't be the man I married." But it was real. Had always been real. We were just seeing it now. The officer looked at me. His voice was calm, steady. "You're not the only one," he said. Something inside me cracked open at those words. Not relief. Not victory. Recognition. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. We had just all been quiet at the same time. They said more victims would be contacted. Statements would be taken. Phones checked. Doors knocked on. The dinner that started this was no longer just a family emergency. It was evidence. My mother cried quietly beside me, her grief deep and tangled, not just for the man she thought she knew, but for every moment she hadn't seen, every silence she had mistaken for peace. I stared at the wall across from me, my reflection faint in the glass. The truth had been sitting in his pocket all along, and now it was finally out in the open where it could no longer hide. My mother didn't scream when she finally understood. She didn't shout or argue or deny it anymore. She just went very quiet. Too quiet. She stood up slowly in the hospital hallway, holding the phone the officer had given back to her, like it weighed more than it should. She took a few steps, then stopped. Her knees gave out without warning. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor, her back pressed against it, her face buried in her hands. The sound that came out of her wasn't loud. It was broken, like something deep inside her had cracked open and there was no way to put it back. "I married him," she whispered. "I brought him into our home." People passed by, nurses and visitors, but no one said anything. They all understood this kind of pain. I sat beside her, not knowing where to touch, how to help. She shook like she was freezing. She kept talking through her tears, her words falling over each other. "I trusted him with you. I trusted him with my child." She looked at me then, really looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Her eyes were full of regret. How did I miss this? I didn't have an answer. There wasn't one that could make it better. She remembered things out loud now. Moments she had pushed aside. Times she noticed how Benson spoke to me when he thought she wasn't listening. How he insisted on driving me places alone. How I changed after he came into our lives. Quieter. Smaller. "I told myself you were just growing up," she said, her voice breaking again. "I told myself everything was fine." Her hands pressed against her chest, like the guilt was too heavy to carry. "I failed you," she said. "I failed you as a mother." That hurt more than anything else she had said. I took her hand and held it tightly. "You didn't know," I said softly. "He made sure of that." But she shook her head. "I should have known. Mothers know." Chose peace over truth. And now, her words faded into sobs. She wasn't just grieving the man she thought she married. That grief was already turning into something else. Anger. Shame. Horror. The realization that love had blinded her, and that blindness had cost her daughter years of fear. The hallway felt endless, bright lights stretching on forever. Benson was somewhere behind those doors, hooked to machines. But in that moment he didn't matter. What mattered was my mother, sitting on a hospital floor, realizing her world had been built on a lie. She leaned into me, exhausted, and I let her. For once she wasn't strong. And for once she didn't have to be. The truth had shattered her. But in the broken pieces, something real was finally beginning. Morning came slowly, like it didn't want to be part of what was about to happen. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of machines. Benson's eyes opened, confused at first, heavy with sleep and something darker. He tried to move his hands. Metal clinked softly. He looked down. Handcuffs. For a moment he didn't understand. His face tightened, his brows pulling together like this was some kind of mistake. He turned his head and saw the two officers standing near the door. Ready. Waiting. "What is this?" he asked, his voice dry and weak. One officer stepped forward. "Benson OD'd," he said evenly. "You are under arrest." The words landed hard, even in that quiet room. Benson tried to sit up, panic flashing across his face now. He started to speak, to explain, to laugh it off the way he always did. But the laughter didn't come. His mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, there was no joke that could save him. They read him his rights while he stared at the ceiling, breathing fast. The confident man who had ruled our house couldn't even look at them. He asked for my mother. They didn't answer. By the time we returned home, the house no longer felt like ours. Yellow tape stretched across the front, bright and loud against the quiet street. Police cars were parked outside. Neighbors stood in small groups, whispering, pretending not to stare while staring anyway. The same table where we had eaten dinner was now covered in gloves and evidence bags. Officers moved through the rooms, careful, focused. They photographed glasses, bottles, the floor where Benson had fallen. Every corner held a question. My mother stood frozen near the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself. This was the house she had tried to protect. The house she had believed was safe. I stepped forward without thinking, past the tape, past the whispers, my back straight, my head up. People looked at me differently now. Some with shock, some with pity, some with quiet understanding. I didn't give them anything back. No tears, no explanations, just silence. An officer came out and nodded to another. "He's being transferred," he said. "We're taking him in." Benson was led out a few minutes later, his hands cuffed in front of him, his steps slow and unsteady. Cameras didn't flash, but eyes did. He looked around like he was searching for someone to save him. His eyes found mine. I didn't look away. There was no anger on my face. No victory. Just stillness. He opened his mouth, maybe to say my name, maybe to warn me, maybe to beg. Gave him nothing. The door of the police car closed with a final sound that echoed down the street. As they drove away, the neighbors slowly drifted back into their homes. The whispers faded. Tape stayed. I stood there a moment longer, breathing in the air, feeling the weight lift from my chest. The dinner that was supposed to bring us together had exposed everything, and I was done carrying his secrets. The wind on Lake Naivasha was calm, soft against my skin, carrying the smell of water and reeds. I sat on a wooden bench by the shore, watching the ripples move across the surface. Everything felt quiet, almost peaceful, but my chest was still heavy with the memory of that night. The dinners, the drinks, the fear. I could feel it all again, but this time I was safe, finally safe. I thought about him, Benson, about the way he had smiled, thinking he was in control, the way he had leaned too close, joked too much, laughed too loud. I remembered the bitter taste of the drink, the moment I switched the glasses, and the seconds that decided everything. My hands rested on my knees, and I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to make him suffer. I only needed to survive. The truth hit me harder than anger ever could. Survival wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, careful, steady. It was the decision to trust my instincts, the courage to act in a second, the patience to let the truth catch up with him. He had poured poison into my glass, but I had poured nothing into his. I had done what I had to do to live, and the world had a way of balancing itself after that. I watched a flock of birds lift from the water, wings beating fast, shadows moving across the lake. I smiled faintly, almost to myself. There was freedom in knowing I had escaped him. There was power in knowing he would face the consequences, that justice wasn't mine to take. It was already unfolding. I whispered it aloud, though no one was near. Words for me. Words for anyone who had felt small or afraid. I didn't plan to destroy him. I planned to stay alive. He poured poison into my glass and drank the truth himself. The lake lapped softly against the shore, carrying my words with it. I breathed deeply, letting the wind take the rest. For the first time in years I felt the weight lift, and the world felt like it could belong to me again.